You know, folks, when people out there discover certain things, find these little Easter eggs, or make connections to certain things in comics, movies, television, the one thing a lot of people say is you have too much, would say to them is, you have too much time on your hands. And not just that you have too much time on your hands, but, you know, and it's not just, you know, not just them saying that. And it's not just involving stuff like movies, television shows, and comics and all that. It could be anything. It could be like, you know, one of the hottest things obviously kids like nowadays. These rubber band bracelets again that have been making a comeback, obviously. You know, let's say a kid makes a big old thing like this. It's this size, a big old circle of them. And people wonder how they did that, and they just said, I just have a lot of time. Or so I just, you know, or someone, you know, the kid could say, oh, I just did it over time. I just did it over time, and then somebody can come back and say, well, then obviously you have too much time on your hands. And like I said, it's the same with movies. You know, especially animated movies. Comic book movies are the same, but animated movies are there too. You see, when you find that connection, if you will, or find those Easter eggs in movies, people tend to look at you like that. But sometimes they tend to look at you like that, especially when you make connections between certain films. For example, one of the biggest Easter eggs out there was the brief cameos, walk-by cameos, of Flynn Rider and Rapunzel post long hair, basically when she was a short-haired brunette, Rapunzel. Doing the musical number of First Time and Forever. And of course you had like a little figurine that was kind of a representation of Wreck-It Ralph. But you see, it's not just things like that. But it's not just cameos and Easter eggs like that that you can spot. In fact, some people, when they take a look at Man of Steel, they'll say, oh, did you notice all those W's in there? Or did you notice the W that said Wayne on there for Wayne Enterprises? Or you see that Booster Gold thing, you see that, you see this. You know, if some people will tell me you got too much time in your hands. But recently, Movie Pilot, along with some other online articles, and I think even E! Entertainment said this, E! Online, that's right, E! Entertainment, talked about this. You see, somebody out there apparently had a lot of time on their hands and decided to kind of make a connection between three movies. One is the most recent juggernaut hit from Disney, Frozen, which is now out on DVD and Blu-ray, and I plan to get this week. The other, of course, like I mentioned, is Tangled, and the most surprising, Little Mermaid. So you might say, well, what connections do these movies have? Well, here's what this guy figured out. And let me see if I can try to remember it best I can. But what he figured out was it's sort of based in a timeline. Like Tangled takes place 3 years, if you will, 3 or 4 years before the events in Frozen take place. That's right, 3 or 4 years before the main events in Frozen. Basically 3 or 4 years before Elsa's coronation as Queen of Arendelle. Yeah. basically 3 to 4 years before. Now you might say, well, why is that so important? Well, according to this guy, the wedding that takes place in the animated short that followed animated short follow-up, Tangled Ever After, which is the wedding of Rapunzel and Flynn Rider. Supposedly, according to what this person described, what happens to Anna and Eliza's parents happens 3 years before her coronation, which ironically takes place around the same time as the wedding between Flynn Rider and Rapunzel. So according to this guy, trying to keep up with me when I mention this. So according to this individual, apparently the trip that Anna and Eliza's parents were going on were to Flynn Rider and Rapunzel's wedding in their kingdom. So yeah, apparently the parents of Eliza and Anna were heading to Flynn Rider and Rapunzel's wedding. But, of course, for any of us that have seen the film, we all know what happens to the parents in the ship that they're on, unfortunately. Now, fast forward 3 or 4 years later, and we have Flynn Rider and Rapunzel, cameo-wise, attending the coronation of Eliza. Now, according to this individual, according to this individual, apparently, from their perspective, this was Flynn and Rapunzel's way of making up for the fact that that Anna and Eliza's parents didn't make it to the wedding, so they felt that they need to make it up to Eliza and Anna by attending Eliza's coronation. In other words, make up for the fact that not only did they lose their parents, and the parents couldn't see the wedding, but make up for it by going and attending Eliza's coronation and kind of showing sympathy, if not showing some kind of feeling. Well, you kind of show like, hey, you got somebody to talk to, somebody to have a shoulder to cry on if you need to. Okay. Now, if you're still following, you're probably wondering, what does the Little Mermaid fit in? That is the one thing that surprised me. You see, even though the Little Mermaid came out in 1989, and ironically, according to this individual, both Frozen, which is loosely based on the Snow Queen, and the Little Mermaid were both originally penned, if you will, by Hans Christian Andersen, while Tangled was somebody else, the Grimm brothers. According to what this individual, with obviously, as some people put it, too much time on their hands, kind of connecting, if you will, figured out, what's this? The ship that Ariel explores at the beginning of the film, the ship that she explores at the beginning of the film, is indeed Anna and Eliza's parents' ship that they were on when it sank. Get me there? Get me there? Apparently, the ship that Ariel explores in the 1989 film is the ship of the King and Queen of Arendelle. That's right, of the King and Queen of Arendelle. That's their ship that Ariel explores. Yeah, that ship, according to this individual, belonged to Anna and Eliza's parents, thus connecting the films. How are they connected? Frozen takes place in Norway. Tangled takes place somewhere in Germany. the boat in Frozen was lost in the ocean around Denmark, where Little Mermaid's main scenes under the water, under the sea, take place. So thus, the connection. So basically what he's saying is that even though Little Mermaid, this individual is saying, is that even though Little Mermaid came out in 1989, that to this individual, the animators decided to have a little bit of fun and give people like him a connection of some sort between all three films. So even though Frozen came out last year and recently just came out on Blu-ray and DVD, and even though Tangled came out, what was it, 3 years before? 2, 3 years before or something? Yeah, basically 2.5 years ago. Even though Tangled came out 2.5 years ago, Frozen came out last year, and Little Mermaid came out in '89. Apparently this individual felt that the animators and the creative staff, the writing staff, decided to have a little bit of fun by giving some people like this individual some kind of an Easter egg connection. So, to make it more straightforward and plain, if you will, to make it more straightforward and plain, here's how it goes. Tangled takes place before Frozen and before the events in Little Mermaid. Okay. The wedding, which is in Tangled Ever After, the animated short follow-up, if you will, that takes place around the same time that Anna's and Eliza's parents are lost at sea when the boat sinks in a storm. Okay? That boat is the same boat that Ariel apparently explores and finds at the beginning of The Little Mermaid. And, to top that off, since it was 3 years after the parents' boat sank, killing them, and 3 to 4 years after Flynn Rider and Rapunzel's wedding, according to what this person said, Flynn Rider and Rapunzel thus make up for what happened, thus owe it to, according to them, owe it to Eliza and Anna to be there as support during Eliza's coronation out of sympathy, if not remorse, for what happened to her parents. So, simple way, events of Tangled take place before events in Frozen, and thus ship that sinks in Frozen is ship Ariel finds. There you go. I know. The connections kind of make you want to go cross-eyed. You know what I'm saying? It kind of makes you want to go cross-eyed. It makes your brain want to explode. Because you think to yourself, well, Little Mermaid came out in '89. How can that even freaking be? Well, again, I guess this person looks at the fact that the animators decided to have a little bit of fun and say, hey, let's make these little Easter egg connections. So again, in closing, Tangled takes place 3 years before the events in Frozen, the main events in Frozen. And thus the way Little Mermaid's connected is by the fact that the ship she explores at the beginning of the film is the Arendelle ship of the king and queen that sank. You don't believe me? Google this and you'll see for yourself. I'll even try to find the link and provide it in the description box. But Lord Almighty, no wonder people come up with the phrase, you have too much time on your hands. Because even when I first read this, folks, even blew my mind. And don't write about what they say in the title. You'll never watch Little Mermaid, Tangled, and Frozen the same way again. So, again, trying to make this simple. This came before this, and the ship in Frozen that sinks is the ship in here. Yeah. The ship that she explores in Little Mermaid is the Arendelle ship, according to the people. This person that made the connection, if you will. So, let me know what you guys think about it. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think maybe this person had too much time on their hands? Or do you think they have a legit gripe? Maybe a legit reasoning behind this? Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. And I'll talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.